When I walked through the heavy oak doors of my brother's wedding reception in a custom scarlet-red silk gown, every single head in the room turned. 47 guests, every single one of them dressed in black. They looked like they were at a funeral, and I looked like a fire someone had lit in the middle of it. The photographer couldn't stop shooting me. The bride told me I was the best thing at the reception, and my mother, the woman who had secretly emailed every single guest asking them to wear black so my plus-size body would blend in, stood in the corner and watched her plan spectacularly back. In Savannah, Georgia, where I was born and raised, there is a very specific type of Southern mother. They are women who do not yell, who do not scold, and who never ever make a scene. Instead, they manage. They manage their homes, they manage their social calendars, and above all else, they manage the physical appearances of their daughters. My mother, Paulette, was a grand master of this subtle, crushing management. I am 28 years old, I'm a size 20. I am tall, I have curves, and I take up physical space. This is a fact of my existence that I have come to love, but it was a fact that my mother treated as a chronic, unfortunate illness that needed to be aggressively treated with optical illusions. For the first 22 years of my life, before I finally moved away to Atlanta to escape her orbit, my wardrobe was heavily, exclusively dictated by Paulette. Her weapon of choice was color theory. Or rather, the distinct lack of it. "Serena, honey," she would say, holding up a heavy, shapeless navy blue tunic in a department store while I stared longingly at a bright yellow sundress. Navy is just so much more forgiving. Dark colors recede, sweetheart. They pull the eye away. We want people to look at your beautiful face, not focus on the width. Black, navy, charcoal, deep plum, these were the only colors allowed in my closet. If there was a family photograph to be taken on the porch, Paulette would gently physically maneuver me to the back row, draping a dark cardigan over my shoulders to ensure I blended in with the shadows. "Just softening the edges, Serena," she would murmur, adjusting my collar. "You understand?" I understood perfectly. I understood that my mother was profoundly ashamed of my body, and that her life's mission was to make me as visually insignificant as humanly possible. When I was 22, I packed my bags, moved 4 hours away to Atlanta, got a great job in marketing, and began the long, slow process of unlearning my mother's management. I started buying clothes that fit my body rather than hiding it. I started wearing patterns, but it wasn't until my older brother, Marcus, announced his engagement to a wonderful woman named Tanya that I finally decided to fully break the rules. The wedding was set for October in Savannah. The dress code on the heavy cream-colored invitations was listed simply as cocktail formal. 2 months before the wedding, Paulette called me. "Serena, have you thought about your dress for the wedding yet?" she asked, her voice dripping with that familiar managing tone. I saw a lovely, very elegant midnight blue wrap dress online, long sleeves, very flattering drape. It would really help you look quite streamlined for the family portraits. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath in my bright, sunlit Atlanta apartment. "Actually, Mom," I said smoothly, "I'm having a dress custom-made by a local designer here in the city." A sharp, slightly panicked pause on the other end of the line. "Custom-made? Goodness, Serena, is that necessary? What color is it?" "It's a surprise," I lied cheerfully. "I want you and Marcus to see it on the day." "Well," she sighed heavily, sounding deeply troubled, "just keep in mind what we've always talked about regarding photos. Honey, darker shades just read so much better on camera." I hung up the phone. I drove directly to the studio of a brilliant independent designer named Evelyn. Evelyn was a woman who understood that bodies like mine did not need to be hidden. They needed to be draped correctly. I told her I wanted a gown for my brother's wedding. I told her I wanted it to be elegant, structured, and unforgettable. "And the color?" Evelyn asked, pulling out massive books of silk swatches. I didn't even hesitate. I pointed to a swatch of silk that was so vibrant, so aggressively loud, that it practically vibrated on the page. "Red," I said, "not burgundy, not maroon, scarlet." Evelyn smiled a slow, dangerous smile. "Oh, honey, we are going to make you dangerous." The fitting process took 6 weeks. The final result was a masterpiece. It was a floor-length, flowing silk gown with a structured bodice and a subtle, sweeping train. The color was a pure, unadulterated, screaming scarlet. It was the absolute antithesis of everything my mother had ever taught me. It was a dress that demanded to be seen. I paid $1,200 for it. It was worth every single penny. I packed it carefully in a garment bag and drove down to Savannah on the morning of the wedding, feeling nervous but incredibly powerful. I had absolutely no idea that while I had been doing my fittings in Atlanta, my mother had been quietly executing a massive, desperate logistical operation behind my back to ensure that her size 20 daughter would remain invisible. I arrived at the historic downtown venue at 4:45 p.m. for the 5 p.m. ceremony. I had checked into a hotel 3 blocks away earlier that afternoon. I had taken a full hour getting ready. I had my hair done up perfectly. I had applied a flawless red lip to match the dress. When I finally slipped into the scarlet silk, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back at me. Gone was the girl in the shapeless navy tunics hiding in the back row. I walked out of the hotel and toward the venue, the red silk catching the late afternoon sun. I walked through the heavy oak doors of the reception hall, and I stopped dead in my tracks. The room was dark. I don't mean the lighting was dim, I mean the people. Every single guest milling around the lobby, finding their seats, holding cocktail glasses, every single one of them was wearing black. I saw women in black cocktail dresses. I saw women in dark charcoal pantsuits. I saw men in pitch black suits with dark ties. I stood there, a glowing, burning pillar of scarlet red in a sea of absolute darkness. Now, before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause for a second. Imagine this. You're standing in a room of 47 people. Every single one of them is wearing black. And you're the only splash of color. What would you be thinking? Drop your answer in the comments below. Because at this point, I had absolutely no idea why the room looked like this. At the time, I didn't understand what had happened. I simply assumed it was a bizarre, massive coincidence. Perhaps black was trending heavily for fall weddings in Savannah. Perhaps Tanya's family just preferred dark colors. I registered only that the room was entirely devoid of color, and I was not, which is simply a thing that happens when you wear custom scarlet silk. I smiled, squared my shoulders, and walked down the aisle to find my seat. As I moved through the room, heads turned. They couldn't help it. The human eye is naturally drawn to contrast, and I was the highest contrast object in the building. I found my seat near the front, sitting between Tanya's sister, Bree, and my cousin, Henry. The ceremony was beautiful. Marcus looked happier than I had ever seen him, and Tanya was stunning. But as the ceremony ended and we moved into the grand hall for the cocktail hour and reception, something fascinating began to happen. The professional photographer, a highly sought-after artist known for his dramatic, editorial style, began moving through the venue, and he immediately fixated on me. He didn't just take the standard candid shots, he photographed me, specifically, over and over again. He took a shot of me standing near the massive arched windows during cocktail hour, the natural light hitting the red silk and making it glow like a ruby against the dark suits of the men standing next to me. He took a shot of me mid-laugh with Henry, the red fabric swirling around my legs. And later during the reception, he arranged a massive, sprawling group shot of the extended families on the dance floor. He positioned me right near the center. I was the only note of color in an ocean of black and charcoal. I was the undeniable burning focal point of the entire photograph. Not because anyone had maliciously arranged it, not because I was trying to steal the spotlight, but simply because color functions the way color functions in a room that has been specifically, intentionally drained of it. During the cocktail hour, Paulette finally found me. She walked up to me holding a glass of white wine. She was wearing a stunning, tailored black gown. Her eyes immediately went to my dress. They scanned from the hemline up to the bodice. Her jaw tightened so hard I thought her teeth might crack. "Serena," she said, her voice thin and strained. "You look?" She paused, swallowing hard. "Very bright." "I know," I smiled pleasantly, twirling my own glass. "I'm wearing red, Mom." "I see that." Her eyes darted around the room, looking at the 40-something guests, all clad in funereal black, and then back at her glowing size 20 daughter. "It's a beautiful venue, Mom," I continued, ignoring her panic. "You must be so happy for Marcus," she redirected. She was always very good at redirecting. We talked briefly about the floral arrangements and the caterers. She did not mention the scarlet gown again for the rest of the evening. She spent the entire reception avoiding the photographer, trying to stay out of the frame whenever I was near it. I danced. I drank champagne. I had the time of my life. It wasn't until the following morning that I finally discovered exactly why the room had been so dark. The post-wedding brunch was held the following morning at a charming, sunlit restaurant in the Starland district. It was an intimate gathering. Just Marcus and Tanya's immediate families coming together over eggs Benedict and bottomless mimosas to share the gentle, exhausted exhale that always follows a massive, successful event. I arrived wearing a simple, tailored, cream-colored jumpsuit. I took a seat near the middle of the long table, ending up directly next to Tanya's younger sister, Cassie. Cassie was a 24-year-old nursing student. She was bright, energetic, and possessed the specific unvarnished quality of someone who simply says the obvious thing out loud because it has literally never occurred to her to play political games. We were casually discussing the wedding, the beautiful vows, the excellent catering, how exhausted Marcus looked by the end of the night, when Cassie suddenly paused, took a sip of her mimosa, and turned to me. "Hey, can I ask you something kind of weird?" she asked, leaning in slightly. "Sure," I replied, buttering a piece of toast. "What's up? Did you get that email from your mom last week?" I stopped buttering. I looked at her.
"What email?"
"The dress code one," Cassie clarified, waving a hand casually, about everyone wearing black to the reception. A cold, very still feeling dropped into the pit of my stomach. The invitation just said cocktail formal, Cassie.
"Right, I know."
She nodded emphatically. "But your mom sent a separate mass email out to all the guests like 4 days ago. Hold on, I think I still have it in my inbox." She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen a few times, and held it out to me across the table. I took the phone. The sender was Paulette. The recipient list had 47 email addresses on it. Every single guest from the bride and groom's extended families, except mine. The subject line read, "Quick note about Saturday." I read the body of the email. "Hello, everyone. We are so incredibly excited to celebrate Marcus and Tanya with you all this weekend. Just a quick logistical note regarding the reception. We would absolutely love it if all our guests could consider wearing black or very dark, solid colors for the evening. It creates such a beautiful, cohesive, elegant look for the professional photographs, and it really helps everyone look their slimmest. Can't wait to see you all on the dance floor. Warmly, Paulette." I read the email, and then I read it again. I thought it was honestly a bit strange. Cassie babbled on, completely oblivious to the tectonic plates shifting inside my head. Like, who mandates black for a southern fall wedding? But you know how mother of the grooms can be, so everyone just kind of went with it to be polite. She took her phone back, laughing lightly. "Everyone," I repeated softly. My voice sounded very far away. "Yeah, everyone," Cassie grinned. "Except you, obviously, which was so awesome. You looked absolutely incredible in that red gown, by the way. You were literally the only pop of color in every single photo the guy took. The photographer probably loved you. You totally stole the show." I put my hands in my lap. I placed them flat against the fabric of my jumpsuit so Cassie wouldn't see them shaking. "Thank you for telling me, Cassie," I managed to say, my voice terrifyingly calm. I picked up my mimosa. I took a slow sip. And I looked across the crowded restaurant to the head of the table. Paulette was sitting there, talking animatedly to Tanya's mother, looking warm, elegant, and entirely pleased with herself. 47 emails, one for every single guest but me. The strategy was brutally obvious. Paulette knew that I had stopped listening to her wardrobe advice. She knew I was having a custom dress made. She terrified herself with the idea that I might show up in something bright, something that drew attention to my size 20 body. So she tried to rig the game. She tried to manipulate the entire room. She dressed 47 people in black, assuming that if I showed up in my usual dark colors, I would simply vanish into the crowd. I would become just another shadow in a room full of shadows. She had weaponized an entire guest list to ensure my physical erasure. Instead, I had walked in wearing a $1,200 custom scarlet silk gown. I cannot tell you that I felt triumphant in that specific moment. The honest answer is that sitting at that brunch table, I felt something far more complicated. It was a very specific, heavy texture of grief. The grief that hits you when you understand, conclusively and undeniably, that your own mother has expended significant logistical effort to make you less visible at an event where you had every fundamental right to exist at your full size. But underneath that grief, quieter, harder, and infinitely more durable, was something else. Something that felt exactly like Evelyn's design studio. Something that felt like the heavy, luxurious weight of the scarlet silk. I had worn exactly the right thing. Without even knowing her plan, I had dismantled it simply by refusing to be small. I had dismantled it by stopping, somewhere during my years in Atlanta, wearing what management required of me. If you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because I promise you the ending of this one is going to leave you absolutely speechless. I did not confront my mother at the brunch. I am not the kind of woman who ruins a post-wedding family meal with screaming matches and dramatic accusations. I left the brunch, hugged my brother tightly, kissed his new wife on the cheek, and drove back to Atlanta. I sat with what Cassie had shown me for 4 full days. I let the anger burn hot, and then I let it cool into something sharp, precise, and unbreakable. I went to work. I bought groceries. I unpacked my beautiful scarlet gown and hung it proudly on the outside of my closet door, where I could look at it every single day. On Thursday evening, after I finished dinner, I sat on my couch and picked up my phone. I called my mother. She answered on the second ring. "Serena, darling?" she chimed, her voice light and breezy. "How was the drive back to the city? Have you recovered from the weekend yet?" "The drive was fine, Mom," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "But I didn't call to talk about the drive. I need to ask you about an email." There was a pause. It was a very specific, suffocating pause. The pause of a woman who meticulously manages everything, suddenly realizing she left a massive, fatal, loose thread hanging in plain sight. What email, honey?" she asked, her voice faltering slightly. "The email you sent to 47 wedding guests last week, asking them all to wear black to the reception," I said smoothly, delivering the words like a precise surgical strike. "The email you explicitly did not send to me." The pause this time was agonizingly long. I could hear her breathing over the line. "Serena?" she started, her voice suddenly thin and reedy. "I'm going to let you answer, Mom," I interrupted, my tone authoritative and utterly unyielding. "But I want you to answer me honestly, not logistically. Do not give me a PR explanation about photo cohesion. Do not give me an excuse about aesthetics. Why did you send that email to every single guest except your own daughter?" A very long, heavy silence stretched across the 400 miles between Atlanta and Savannah. "I was trying to help," Paulette said finally. Her words were small, fragile, and they sounded exactly like a lie that had finally run out of oxygen. "Help me do what exactly?" I pressed, refusing to let her off the hook. "Blend in," she whispered. "Just a little. I just thought if everyone else was in dark colors, then I'd be less visible." I finished for her. "I didn't mean it like that, Serena. I swear I didn't." "Mom, that is exactly what it means," I said, my voice rising slightly, thick with decades of suppressed frustration. "You spent 22 years putting me in dark colors, shoving me into the back of photos, hiding me at the edge of the frames. And when you couldn't do that to me directly anymore because I am a grown woman who lives in a different city and dresses herself, you tried to manipulate the entire room around me instead." She didn't answer. She just let out a ragged, trembling breath. "But I wore red," I told her, my voice dropping back down to a calm, undeniable certainty. "I wore a custom scarlet gown. I wore it because it's the color I feel the most beautiful, the most powerful, and the most like myself in. I was going to my brother's wedding, and I wanted to feel exactly like myself, and because you dressed 47 people in funeral black, Mom, I was the only pop of color in the entire room." I paused, letting the reality of her spectacular failure sink in. "I am the focal point of every single photograph." She was crying now. I could hear the wet, hiccuping sobs over the line. For the first time in my life, Paulette's ironclad management had completely collapsed. "Serena, I'm so sorry," she wept, sounding broken and exhausted. "I know how terrible it sounds when you say it out loud. I know I worry about you. I have always worried about you and how people perceive you. I know you do," I replied, keeping my voice incredibly even. "But you need to understand something fundamental moving forward, Mom. When you worry about me in a way that actively tries to make me smaller, when you literally try to arrange the physical world so that I take up less visual space, that is not love. It feels like shame. It feels like you're ashamed of me. And I am officially done absorbing your shame as though it belongs to me." A long, devastating quiet settled over the phone. "I know," she whispered finally. It was the smallest, most honest thing I had ever heard her say. "I know." Marcus called me the following week. He had spoken to Paulette. I don't know exactly what was said in that conversation, but Marcus is not an angry person. He is a calm, direct, and fiercely protective man who processes the world through logic and fairness, which is probably why he became an engineer and not a politician. He didn't yell at me for upsetting our mother. He didn't ask me to apologize to smooth things over. He didn't suggest I was overreacting or being dramatic or any of the other words that are routinely deployed against women who dare to be angry about the things that have been done to their bodies. He just called me on his lunch break and said exactly what needed to be said. "Serena," he said warmly, "you are my sister. You belong in every single photo taken in my life. Full size, full color, no hiding. And I'm deeply sorry that Mom ever made you feel otherwise, let alone at my wedding." I was sitting on the fire escape of my Atlanta apartment. The October air was warm and thick, the way Georgia October air always is. Not quite summer, not quite fall, just humid enough to make you feel held. I closed my eyes, feeling a massive weight lift off my chest. Thank you, Marcus, truly. And the wedding was absolutely beautiful. Tanya looked extraordinary. She did, he agreed, the love evident in his voice. Though she did ask me to tell you that your red gown was officially the best thing at the reception. She was obsessed with it. I laughed out loud. "Please don't tell Mom she said that." "Too late," Marcus chuckled. "I already did." There was a pause. The comfortable kind of pause that only exists between siblings who have survived the same household and come out the other side still speaking to each other. "Serena, can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "The gown, the red one. Did you know? When you were getting it made, did you know about Mom's email?" I thought about it. I thought about Evelyn's studio, the bolts of fabric stacked against the exposed brick walls, the industrial sewing machines humming, the afternoon light pouring through the windows. I thought about the moment Evelyn had held up that first swatch of scarlet silk and the way it had caught the light like something alive. "No," I said. "I didn't know about the email. I just wanted to feel beautiful at my brother's wedding. That's it. That's the whole story. But you chose red. I chose red because I have spent my entire life being told to disappear into dark colors, and I decided, not for the wedding specifically, but for my life generally, that I was done disappearing." Another pause. Longer this time. "I'm glad you chose red," Marcus said. "I'm glad you were the loudest thing in the room. Let me tell you about Evelyn, because Evelyn is part of this story in a way that I didn't fully understand until later. Evelyn Okafor is a dress designer. She runs a small, stunning custom atelier out of a converted warehouse in Atlanta's Old Fourth Ward, a space that smells like pressed cotton and possibility. She specializes in formal wear for plus-size women, and she operates with a philosophy that I had never encountered before. I walked through her door. She does not design dresses to minimize. She designs dresses to amplify. I found Evelyn through a friend of a friend, one of those word-of-mouth chains that Atlanta's Black creative community runs on, and I went to her studio 4 months before Marcus's wedding with a single request. "I want a gown that makes people look at me." Evelyn had smiled. Not the polite customer service smile. The real one. The one that said, "I have been waiting for someone to say that." We spent 3 sessions together before she even touched a piece of fabric. She measured me, all of me, every curve and angle, without apologizing or suggesting adjustments. She asked me questions that no designer had ever asked me before. What colors make you feel powerful? What textures make you feel held? When you walk into a room, do you want to enter quietly or arrive? "Arrive," I said without hesitation. She nodded. Then she pulled out a bolt of silk that was the exact color of a cardinal's wing. Deep, blazing, unapologetic scarlet, and she said, "This is your fabric. This fabric does not whisper. This fabric announces." The gown took 6 weeks, 3 fittings. Evelyn adjusted every seam, every drape, every fall of fabric until it moved with my body like it had been born there. She added a subtle train, just enough to sweep the floor behind me when I walked, and a structured bodice that held me without containing me. The neckline was a deep V that showed my collarbones and the gold chain I always wear, the one my grandmother gave me when I turned 18. The one with the tiny compass pendant that she said would remind me which direction to go when I got lost. When I put on the finished gown for the final fitting and looked at myself in Evelyn's full-length mirror, a massive, gilt-framed antique she had rescued from an estate sale, something happened that I was not prepared for. I saw myself. Not the managed version, not the dark-colored, strategically hidden background blending version that Paulette had spent 22 years constructing. The actual version. The full version. The woman who takes up space and whose space is beautiful and whose beauty is not conditional on being smaller. I cried. Right there in the atelier. Evelyn handed me a tissue and said, with the quiet authority of a woman who has watched this happen before, "That's what it looks like when a dress tells the truth." I wore that truth to my brother's wedding, And when 47 people in black turned to look at the woman in scarlet, when the sea of shadows parted and I walked through it like a flame, I was not performing revenge. I was not making a statement. I was just wearing my actual self in my actual color for the first time in my actual life. The fact that it ruined my mother's plan was incidental. Beautiful, but incidental. I want to hear from you. Was I right to do what I did? Or did I go too far? Let me know in the comments. 3 weeks after the wedding, I received an email from Cassie containing a link to a local wedding photography blog. The professional photographer from the wedding had submitted a selection of his recent work for a featured editorial piece on lighting, composition, and contrast in event photography. Right in the middle of the article was the massive, sprawling group shot from the dance floor. It was breathtaking. The room was a sea of dark, elegant shadows, a sea of black suits and charcoal dresses, 47 people dressed in funeral colors, because my mother had asked them to, because my mother had wanted the room to absorb her daughter the way a black hole absorbs light, and dead in the center, laughing brilliantly, arms raised mid-dance, was a woman in a glowing, burning scarlet silk gown. The photographer had written a short caption underneath the image. It read, "Sometimes the strongest, most compelling element in the frame is the one that completely refused to follow the instructions." The article was shared 2,400 times. I know because I checked. People I had never met were commenting on the photograph, not on my body, not on my size, but on the composition, on the contrast, on the way a single point of red in a field of black creates something that the eye cannot look away from. I was not invisible, I was, by the literal rules of visual composition, the most visible thing in the room. Paulette saw the article. Cassie told me she forwarded it to her, because Cassie, while diplomatic, also possesses the specific Southern gift of knowing exactly when to twist the knife with a smile. My mother called me the night the article went viral in Savannah's social circles. Her voice was smaller than I had ever heard it. Not broken, Paulette does not break, but bent in a direction she had never been bent before. "That photograph," she said. "You look?" She stopped, regrouped, tried again. "You look exactly like my mother," she whispered. "Your grandmother. She was big too, beautiful. She used to wear this red church hat every Sunday that drove my father absolutely crazy. He said it was too much. She said, everything about me is too much. That's the whole point." I pressed the phone against my ear. I had never heard this story. In 28 years, Paulette had never once told me that her own mother, my grandmother who died when I was 3, had been plus size, had been big, had worn red. "Why didn't you ever tell me that?" I asked. A long silence. The kind of silence that holds 30 years of unprocessed grief and fear, and the specific inherited shame that mothers pass to daughters like a genetic trait nobody asked for. "Because I watched how the world treated her," Paulette said, "and I was terrified it would treat you the same way, so I tried to make you smaller, quieter, less visible. I thought if I could just tuck you in enough, the world wouldn't notice, and it wouldn't hurt you the way it hurt her. Mom, I know. I know what I did instead. I became the thing I was trying to protect you from." We were both crying now. Not the dramatic, performative kind, the quiet kind. The kind that runs down your face and drops onto your shirt, and you don't bother wiping it because the grief is too old and too honest for that. "Mom," I said, "I need you to hear something. I'm not invisible. I was never invisible. I was just dressed in colors that were trying to pretend I was, and I'm done with that. Forever." "I know, baby," she said. "I know. And I need you to stop managing me. I know. And I need you to come to Atlanta next month. I need you to meet Evelyn, my dress designer. She's going to make you something in color, something that isn't black or navy or charcoal." A pause. The smallest, most terrified pause. "What color?" Paulette asked. I smiled. "Red." I didn't just save the wedding photograph on my phone. I downloaded the high-resolution file. I sent it to a professional printing service. I had it blown up to a massive size and custom framed in a beautiful heavy gold frame. It now hangs directly in the center of the main wall in my living room in Atlanta. A size 20 woman, a scarlet gown, mid-laugh, the only color in the entire room. I look exactly like who I am, unapologetic, vibrant, taking up space. That was the whole point of the dress. That was always the whole point. And next month, Paulette is getting her own, in red, designed by Evelyn, measured without apology. I can't wait to see her wear it. I can't wait to watch her arrive. If this story hit you, If you've spent your life in dark colors, hiding in the back of photos, being managed into invisibility, drop a comment below. Tell me your color. The one you've been afraid to wear. I read every single one of them. And if this gave you chills, you're gonna love the next one. Click the video on your screen right now. And if you haven't subscribed yet, join our community. We drop a new revenge story every single week. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss one. I'll see you in the next one. Wear the red, wear it loud, let them look,